Hello and welcome back to my small little library. Let us do the wrap up for January. I had a really good reading month in January. Not specifically that every book was great, but I did read quite a bit and I was really happy, with the way that I've read and the amount of books, and just all in all, I had a rather enjoyable month. So, I did use my bullet journal as I had hoped. So I have an entrance for each and every book that I've read this month, and I wrote down a few thoughts I had on the books, so that will help me to get things straight out. So let's start with the first book that I read in January, and that was an audiobook about trees. And the book is called The Hidden Life of Trees by Peter Wohleben. He's a German author, but I did listen to it in English because my library only had the English version. Yeah, I really enjoyed that book. I gave it 4 stars. I kind of only listened to it because I couldn't find anything, and then I was like, why not listen to a book about trees? And I never knew that there were so much interesting facts about trees out there that I did not know, that I never thought about, So that was really enjoyable. 4 stars. If you've never thought about trees and why it's so important that we actually save our forests and keep them as natural as we can, you should listen to that book. That was just incredible. I just really enjoyed. He obviously has a passion for what he's doing but he first worked as somebody who fells trees, and at some point he switched from being kind of the destroyer of the forest to the savior of the forest, which is kind of really interesting. And you can really hear in the book how passionate he was about the forests, and just really interesting. And then we have by far the biggest book that I've read. I read half of it last year in December, and then half of it this year in January, and that is The Stand by Stephen King. This is massive. This is as big as it, over 1,000 pages. So yeah, it took me quite some time. I absolutely loved the first 700 pages. I had a blast with those. Then there were 300 pages where I was really I don't know, I don't really enjoy that part. And then the last 200 pages or something like that were better again, but just nothing compares to the beginning of this book. So yeah, I gave it 4.5 stars because I think overall it's a great way to tell the story. It is a post-apocalyptic story, but we start at the beginning of the pandemic and we end pretty much when people start forming the first colonies again, the people that survived the pandemic, and there weren't that many. So yeah, it was really interesting. Maybe not something for you if you have still a little bit of PTSD from corona, but yeah, we have a virus here and it's really deadly. But it was really interesting, and I he really starts out with describing certain people's journey from getting ripped out of normal life and then having to cope and deal with what to do. There's also a little bit of a religious aspect in here, but I didn't mind that at all. It just was kind of there to give the story direction, which is really needed when you have a book that is this big. But yeah, if you want to have a post-apocalyptic story that focuses on the journey of few in pretty good detail, then I would say go and read this one. I think it's a great read. The next book was really disappointing, which is how it always goes, seemingly, and that is The Tooth Fairy by Graham Joyce. This is a horror book. I got this in my book box with all the horror books. This is about the Tooth Fairy, but technically it's more about the coming of age of a boy, and we start when he's really young at 5 years old, and we go to early adulthood. And it's not really a retelling, which is what I thought it might be, because it's pretty much just, I don't really want to spoil it, but the Tooth Fairy is more like to give the illusion of the story not being obvious, but the story is really, really obvious, and we just have like a really, really aggressive child here. And nobody is really doing anything about it. Like, he's not obviously aggressive, but he has really, really big problems, and that is what the book is about mainly. Everybody sucks in this book. Everybody fails the children in this book. It's, I don't know. Even, you know, the three main children, we have like one main character, we have three main children, and they all come from like a slightly different backgrounds. Nobody is rich, but you know, you have the really, really poor, and then you have like more like getting in the middle class, but they all just suck. The parents, the children, the school, everybody around them just really fails them, and it read really, really annoying because it kind of makes it seem like it's not what it is, and I didn't enjoy that. Also, the other fact is that this book is just way too sexual. I think it's really, really weird to have a coming of age story that is so over sexualized from like the youngest age of the main character that it's just really inappropriate. And it's not, it's not important for the story. It's really not. Yeah, 2 stars. Wouldn't read it again. Wouldn't recommend it. There's really nothing to be gained from reading this book. And then we have another book that is also 2 stars, but for really, really different reasons, and that is The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime. This one is a book that is also from the point of view of child, and I really realized this month that I'm not up for that. I don't enjoy that. But here it is also that the child also has autism, which obviously changes a lot. It's just what it is. And he has like not like a severe form, but he is also not like on the lighter side of the spectrum. And but the book is sold as a murder mystery of who killed the dog. And the main character, the child, is trying to find that out. He's like early teenhood, I think. But the thing is, only half of the book actually is about that, and then the second half of the book is more about the conflict of the parents of the boy, because they split up. And his father told a lot of lies, and the mother is also not really a great character. It's pretty much also a book about parents who fail the children, but it gets sold as a murder mystery, so you expect one thing and then you get another thing, and that really irked me. And to be honest, it gets on my nerve, the POV. I'm just gonna be honest, I found it really hard to read. He equates everything to math. I liked math in school, I was good at math, but it makes weird reading, if you get me. So 2 stars. Would I recommend it? No. I don't think it's a particularly good book. But maybe if you like books from the point of view of children, then it could maybe be a little bit more interesting. But you have to keep in mind, it is not a murder mystery. Because he doesn't find out who killed the dog. He gets told who killed the dog. And then, it's more or less about the parents and how horribly they kind of fail him. It's really weird. And then I picked up another horror book. At least I thought it was a horror book. It's more like a supernatural mystery and a historical fiction together with that. This one I actually kind of really enjoyed. I give it 4 stars. The middle was a little bit like, but the beginning and the end were really good. So I decided to give it 4 stars because I did enjoy it, and I would recommend it if you like supernatural, seances, talking to ghosts, stuff like that combined with historical fiction, because this plays out between the First and Second World Wars in a small village in England somewhere, I think. The only thing that really irked me is nothing of this book says that it's a second part, but it is a second part. You just don't get to know if you just pick up this copy. So yeah, technically we get our main characters, which is a woman and a man. Like, the man is the investigator and the woman works for him as secretary in the first book. The second book, they already split up from working together, and they get back together for working. So that's obviously a fact you don't know if you don't know that this is the second book. So yeah, that annoyed me, but I think the book is good. I would have just wished that I read the first one before, though I don't think it's technically that necessary. Yeah, other than that, it's just really the first historical fiction that I enjoyed, which is nice. I haven't read any other historical fiction that I enjoyed, but at least where the main focus on the stories on the historical fiction. I have read fantasy, obviously, that is like, you know, inspired by medieval times, but obviously there's the focus on the fantasy, not on the historicalness of the story. Here, definitely historicalness is a big factor in the book. But yeah, I would recommend it. I think it was a really interesting take on the supernatural and debunking the supernatural, or like, you know, finding out what has happened, and this village that is kind of lost to time because the military owns it and they don't want to give it back, and that question also plays like a big role. And yeah, I really like that. So then I listened to another audiobook, which is Network Effect by Martha Wells, the 5th book in the Murdoch series, which was amazing. 5 stars. It was by far the best book in the series. It was also the longest in the series. Yeah, it's amazing. It's all I wanted from the Murderbot series, and I'm so sad. I only have one book left in the series, and then it's over. I'm really sad about that. Yeah, it's just the awkwardness, you know. I'm not one for like drama and cringy stuff, but I feel like the awkwardness of the Murderbot is just the perfect level of awkwardness that I enjoy reading about. And yeah, I don't know, points I can see myself on him, which is funny because I'm a human and not a robot. But yeah, that book was just amazing, and it definitely cemented that I will buy the whole series at some point. I obviously borrowed them all from the library, I listened to them all, but yeah, it will definitely get me a copy because it's an amazing sci-fi series. If you have never read it, you need to read it. 5 stars, chef's kiss, amazing. Then I read another Stephen King because I just love his books. So I picked up Desperation and I read it in the last month, and I really loved this book. I gave it 5 stars. Though I did feel like whilst I was reading it that I did already know the story, so either I read the book or watched the movie a long time ago. It has to be at least like 15 years ago, which I'm not sure what I did, but yeah, I did definitely know quite a few parts of the story, which was really weird because definitely I haven't read anything about Desperation or watched the movie in 10 years. That much I'm sure of. But yeah, it's a horror book. It's a horror book where all of the people get brought into the city of Desperation by a cop, and the cop seems not to be normal, and things go really downhill from there. But yeah, it was a really wild ride, I have to say that, with a lot of like death, a lot of horror, a lot of like, if you're squeamish when it comes to like animals, and in horror books you might have a problem with this, especially like snakes, scorpions, wolves, coyotes, they're all in here and they're all ready to wreak havoc together with the cop. But yeah, other than that, I really loved this book. Also, the characters were really interesting. Sometimes I feel like people lose the focus on the character when they write horror books, and I feel like that one has like a really big focus on the characters. So yeah, it was great, and the ending was really sad. Which Stephen King books are less sad, I would say, than they are just dramatic. But that was actually really sad at the end. Then I read an ebook on Kindle Unlimited. It is called Suffer Less. It is a contemporary reverse harem story, but it's really mellow when it comes to the spiciness. And I love that book. I read it before, a few years ago when it came out on Kindle Unlimited, which I think is like 4 or 5 years ago. And it's pretty much just a really sad story in and of itself, because our main character, Alessa, has really, really bad life, and she gets kind of saved by these 3 motorcyclists who come through her city and take her away with them. And the story has a little bit of drama from there, but in the end it's all a happy ending, which is what I love in those stories, you know. I want drama, but I don't want relationship drama. I want like drama outside of the relationship, which is what this book delivers. And yeah, it's a really, really nice, interesting story with a little bit of smut in there, but not that much. So yeah, I gave it a 2 on the spiciness out of 5, and I gave it 4 out of 5 stars because yeah, I don't know, it's a sad story, but it's also like a happy-go-lucky story, which is a weird combination, but it just works for me. And then I read 3 short stories from the Far Reaches collection on Kindle Unlimited. The first one I've read was The Long Game, which is by Anne Leckie, I think is how you pronounce it, and it's a story about like cute blob-like aliens who live on a planet where humans have come to the planet, and they kind of use the little aliens to, well, they exploit them kind of. And then one of the aliens is kind of like wondering why they only live so shortly compared to the humans, and he goes on a journey to find out. It was really weird. It didn't really have like any kind of real story because of what happened. There's really not anything happening at all, you know? So it was really weird. I still gave it 3 stars because I did really like the aliens and the humans, and I did like the writing style, but it didn't really have like anywhere to go. I don't know. I think like a longer version of the story could have been really, really good, but obviously it's a short story collection, so we only get a short story. But yeah, it was the best out of the 3, which I'm sad to say. But yeah, then we have the second short story that I read, which is called Just Out of Jupiter's Reach, and that is by, it is by Nenedi Okorafor. I'm gonna put the name on the screen here together with the cover anyway. I'm really sorry, I don't know how to pronounce that name. And this one just had a really, really weird focus on the story. It's about humanity has like spaceships, they grow by DNA, and only like a few select humans are able to do that, and so they send those humans in those grown ships into space on a 10-year mission, and they are like all alone for 5 years, and then they meet at an endpoint, and then they drive back for 5 years, and they are supposed to do research, you know, whilst they do that, but they don't have any contact to other human beings. And I thought the story would focus, you know, on the being alone part of the story, but pretty much the only story that was there was when the humans came back together. There's drama, and then the story ends, which was really sad. I found it to be really weird. I would have wished the focus was anywhere else. So 2 stars. Wouldn't really recommend, because I don't know. I think the idea was great, the way that it was done really wasn't. But the writing style was good, so maybe I will just pick up a longer novel by the author. And then we have the last of the Far Reaches that I've read this month, which is called Falling Buddies by Rebecca Ronos, which I know is like a popular author. I haven't read anything else from her. But yeah, this one also got 2 stars, as well as the last one. This one was just that the ending was just so disappointing. It really ruined the whole story before that. It's pretty much, you know, you have humans, you have aliens which tower over the humans pretty much. And they had a war, they made peace, and as a kind of peace offering, one orphan that was orphaned on the human side got put into the care of one of the aliens. And he grows up, and then there's always the conflict of like, you know, you are a human, but you were raised by the aliens, and obviously there's a lot of conflict. Stolen children are a theme, you know, which happened in real life, which is really, really horrible. And then the end of the story just made the whole story go mute, and it was really, really bad. So I gave it 2 stars because I enjoyed part of it, but then the ending ruined completely all of it. Yeah, so I wouldn't recommend that. I don't think it's a good story. I think that could have been handled way, way different. A longer version would have also been better, but like with that ending, it's like not salvageable. Then I listened to another audiobook, and that is called 9 Nasty Words, which was really interesting. It's by John McWhirter, I think is his name. I give it 4 stars. It's just a history about a few English swear words. And obviously I'm German, so we don't use that many English swear words, but we do use things like fuck, you know, stuff like that. We do use that here. But there were other words where I didn't ever know where they were coming from, and then he really explained, you know, which words came from the church. And then we have the N-word, for example, which has a really, really interesting history of the word, like how, you know, it going from racism to then being kind of gotten back or like used by the people it was used to obviously put down. You know, they reclaiming the word, but it being technically 2 different words. It's really interesting. The author does it really, really, really well, and it was so interesting. I don't know, I never knew that much about swear words. I'm not, well, I do use them, but I'm not somebody who like swears excessively, you know. But it was really interesting to see where they're coming from. And then we have the last book that I read that much, that I've read this month, and that is Eyes of Prey by Barry Hoffman. This is another horror book, I thought, but technically it's more of a thriller. And I gave it 3 stars. I liked the concept of the story. I hated the ending. It's pretty much, we have our main character who, her parents died really, really horrifically. And she was there and she saw everything, you know. She was then kind of in a cathartic stage. And when she came out of it, like, she has a lot of trauma. And then she now works at a strip club. She's an adult. And she goes home from work and a man is mugged on the subway. And she's the only one that steps up and helps the man. And she shoots the mugger because he has a gun. She takes his gun and she shoots him. And all of the people in the subway are like, you know, you need to get going because he is black and you are white. And everybody will construe it as a racial crime. And that wasn't the case. So she flees and then she starts kind of inspiring a movement to take back the streets, because she then goes out and actually kills other people. But the way she does it, she kind of like goes out, makes herself seem like a victim, and once the perpetrators come and try to hurt her in various different ways, she then shoots them. And we get like the perspective of the cops that are trying to solve the case. We have her perspective and then a few other people. And the story in itself was really interesting, but the ending is so annoying. I won't spoil it to you because I would actually kind of recommend this book. I think the story was really good. The ending, it just really makes everything she managed to achieve in the book seem worthless. Also, this is the second part. Nowhere on the outside does it say that this is a second part. And this one, I think you really should have read part 1 first, because it explains a lot about one of the characters in the novel and then about the cops as well. Really annoying that it doesn't say it anywhere on this copy. I only realized halfway through the book that it's not part 1 or standalone, and that one really angered me as well, which is why I gave it 3 stars. I think it would have actually gotten a better rating if I would have read the first part first, and if the ending would have been so bad. But it was really bad, the ending. So yeah, just don't read the last like 20 pages, then it's a really good book. The last 20 pages just really, really ruin it. But yeah, that are all the books that I've read in January, and I'm really happy with that. I made a lot of progress when it comes to my physical TBR, but I also enjoyed my audiobooks. Read a little bit of short stories, which I think are really nice for in between longer books. And I read quite a few long books this month. So yeah, that all works out well. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video and the mini quick reviews that come with it. And hopefully I will see you in the next video. Bye!